very excited. We've all been waiting for this, and especially what perfect timing. So there's so much going on with the night operations, and I've actually got to sit through the one with the FAA already. And so I know there's so much good information coming. So Douglas Spotted Eagle is here with us. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to make you spotlight for everyone.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here. This is not the first time I've spoken with Coffee Connection, but my goodness, Coffee Connection has grown immensely. So I'm excited to have opportunity to present to this larger group. We're going to talk about night flight. We're not going to go deeply into how the night flight changes have occurred at the FAA, but we will briefly talk about that. Some of you may recognize some of the information that I'm about to share because only last night we did an FAA safety course for the wings and the FAST team program. So if you were attendees there, thank you. You'll see some similar information as we dive right into it. So one of the first things we want to talk about is, why do we fly at night? What is it that inspires us or makes us want to fly at night to begin with? Well, the really most important part of that, the correct answer to that, is because we can. We have that right, and we should exercise that right for a variety of different purposes. So let's just dive right into some of those purposes. What you're seeing right here is the aftermath of a very large fire in Tooele, Utah. An arsonist decided to play in a field of very dry grass, and unfortunately the wind shifted and it burnt down 13 homes. My barn in particular was a victim of that arsonist's activity, and I thought it was one of these things where we just kind of wanted to see what was going on. So this was before DJI or anybody else was really a brand, and so we duct taped a GoPro camera to a drone and we put it up and captured some pictures. And because it was an unusual perspective, these became some of my first published pictures from an unmanned aircraft that went into a newspaper. They had not seen this kind of an angle. And of course, this is fairly standard today, but this is one of the things that we do with drones. There's some other things that we'll do with them. For example, here's an example of us flying on the Las Vegas Strip at night. This is Class B to the surface and also has special, yeah. Somebody have a question there? Okay, I'll keep rolling. So this is us flying on the Strip at night. This was when the Las Vegas Golden Knights were going to the Stanley Cup playoffs, and you can see that they put the Golden Knights jersey on Lady Liberty there off to the left. So again, this is Class B surface with special provisions. This area is really high risk. And for this particular operation that you're looking at, we use 7 visual observers. Our 10729 waiver requires that when we're flying at night in KLAS, that we have at least 2 visual observers. In this case, we use 7 because it is a high risk activity in a high risk area with lots of things going on. But we fly at night because there's a lot of data that we can capture at night that we wouldn't be able to capture during the day. But there are some real significant considerations when we're flying at night. Let's first start by talking about what is the definition of night flight. Per the FAA, night flight is any flight that takes place 30 minutes after civil twilight, 30 minutes prior to before civil sunrise, and any time in between. So basically, once the sun has gone down below the horizon and state remains there until sunrise, that is considered night flight. And this is where the regulation kicks in, is 30 minutes after civil twilight and 30 minutes before that sunrise. So let's look at the actual FAR, the Federal Aviation Regulation. CFR 107.29 is very specific. First, no person may operate a small unmanned aircraft system during night. That's pretty clear. No person may. Section B says no person may operate a small unmanned aircraft system during periods of civil twilight unless the small unmanned aircraft has lighted anti-collision lighting visible for at least 3 statute miles. So I want to address Section B for just a quick second. There are people, there are pilots out there that are recreational pilots that have thought that they were excluded from this rule, but this rule has been in place for all pilots, recreational or commercial. So you must, regardless of the type of flight that you're doing, you must have anti-collision lighting visible for at least 3 statute miles. We'll talk a little bit about those in just a moment. Moving to the next paragraph, the remote piloting command may reduce the intensity of the anti-collision lighting if he or she determines that because of operating conditions, it would be in the interest of safety to do so. So keep in mind that important transitory word there, may reduce the intensity, because we will be talking about that in just a moment. Because of the period of time we have available, I'm just going to move right past Alaska for right now. You just want to be aware that in Alaska they have slightly different settings for the air almanac because of what it is. Alaska doesn't really have sunset in the summer, and they don't have sunrise in the winter for the most part. So these are what a sunrise sunset table carry. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here because instead of using sunset sunrise table that you're going to find online, etc., most every one of us has got one of these, a smartphone. And in the weather settings for our smartphone, we can have our smartphone indicate sunrise sunset times if we choose to set that up. It doesn't matter if you're an Android or an Apple iOS, both do it. So it's something that's available to us there. So we're just going to move right on and talk about the updates to FAA UAS operations. So as of April 21st, we have new conditions in which we can fly. The first is that we must complete an updated initial knowledge test online for our recurrent training. So if you're currently a pilot, and even if you've just recently received your pilot certification, in other words, you just maybe even last week went down and did a knowledge testing center test at a CATS facility, you still will need to take the updated initial knowledge test online. And again, we must have that lighted anti-collision lighting. So although I have a 10729 waiver and my 107 certification was not up for expiration, I went ahead and went online and I took the test anyway so that I could speak to you a little bit more knowledgeably about the topic. So you're going to go in, you're going to take the ALC 677 test. So you might want to write that down. So when you go to FAAsafety.gov, you will do a search for ALC or Alpha Lima Charlie -677. And you'll take 4 pages of briefing and training information, and then you'll have a real quick exam. And when you're done with that, you'll get a brand new certificate that you can print, hang on the wall, or do whatever with that demonstrates that you've passed that. But what you'll really need is this card-sized placard, because you are required to carry this with you in the event that you are ramped for flying at night. In other words, an ASI, an aviation safety inspector from the FAA, decides to stop by and pay you a little visit and check out your operation. So you will want to have that ALC 677 card with you to demonstrate that you have taken the updated knowledge test. And I'll share with you that it's only been a week since the FAA ASIs and people at the FSDOs were briefed on exactly how this works. So it's fairly fresh in their memory. So you might want to get on that before you fly at night so you don't have to have any issues with the FAA. Let's just keep moving right along since we're a little short on time. The next thing we'll talk about is the requirements. So it's important to understand that no off-the-shelf aircraft offers a lighting system that meets with the FAA regulatory compliance requirements. So you're going to need to purchase some kind of a third-party lighting system. There's lots of them available out there. I'm going to show you a couple because I think it's important to understand, what's there. Now, this next piece is not an FAA requirement. This is a Sundance Media Group recommendation. Night lighting requires a strobe light that strobes no slower than 40 cycles a minute and no faster than 100 cycles a minute. And anti-collision lighting may be colored either red or white, and of course be visible for 3 statute miles. Now, this is one of those situations where we talk about what is safe versus what is legal. And what do I mean by that? Well, until April 21st of this year, the FAA did require that the lights strobe no slower than 40 cycles and no faster than 100 cycles. And they required that anti-collision lighting be red or white. However, on April 21st, that shifted. And the FAA has simply said the remote pilot may self-certify their equipment any way that they see fit, so long as the pilot believes it is compliant with regulatory situations or regulatory requirements. I disagree with the FAA's change, and I'll tell you why. The first thing is that when you have a manned pilot who's up above an aircraft and that pilot is looking down toward the ground, their brain has been trained through hours and hours of training to be looking for lighting that is cycling in this 40 to 100 hertz range. So they're looking for something that's flashing down below them, and that cycle will appear familiar. So they'll know that there's an unmanned aircraft or another aircraft down below. So that's something they're looking for, and that cycle rate helps separate it from any other lighting that might be happening on the Earth because it's a consistent blink. The other thing is that if they're seeing a flashing green, are they seeing a nav light, or are they seeing a navigation light, or are they seeing an anti-collision light? So that part's pretty important that we understand, what's there. So I am a real fan of going well beyond what's legal and focusing on what's safe. So you might have a light that seems to meet that 3 statute mile requirement, and maybe it has the right blink ratio and it's the right color. But we definitely want to be on the far side of what is legal as opposed to, on the near edge. But let's keep going here. So again, we've already talked about, lighting and 3 statute miles and what's there. I want to take just a brief second to talk about some lighting types. There are so many lights you'll find on Amazon or eBay that say, oh, we're completely compliant with FAA regulation. That's marketing speak for most of them. Rarely do they meet FAA requirement. And when we put color gels on them, we almost assuredly are not meeting that 3 statute mile requirement. So let me identify for you a little bit how that works. This is a really popular stick-on light that can go on different systems, and it's got a pretty bright light on it. There we go. So I've got it strobing here in a fairly slow mode. You can see it's letting me know. There we go. It's got a fairly bright strobe on it, but as soon as we throw a red gel on this light, what ends up happening is our intensity is reduced by 75%. So we have a light that when it's white, you can see it just barely for 3 statute miles. So it's right kind of on the cusp of what's legal. Then you add a red gel to it, and all of a sudden you're well outside of what is legal, and you've gone far past safe. So when you're choosing lights, I recommend that you choose quality lights. The light, we're not really here to endorse anybody, but I'll tell you that the light that we use predominantly is the Fox Fury D3060 on our smaller drones. We use the Rugos on our larger drones. We like these because we've got a fixed straight beam that can be reduced, and then it has a strobe. But more importantly, now we've got an upward facing strobe, and this is really great for pilots who might be flying above us. But for us as operators on the ground, we might want to have something that also helps us better identify that aircraft. So we've got a side light that can also strobe. So now I've got a dual strobe light that's functioning here. And this particular light will fly on just about any aircraft you might have. Fox Fury also happens to make a small unit that's called a D10. And it's made for things like the Mavic Air, Parrot Anafi, Mavic Mini, some of these different types of very small aircraft. So I recommend that you get something that you can test out. With the D3060s, we've tested those out to 5 miles. They've been great. D10s are good for about 4 miles. And if you have their Rugo, which is their bigger beastie, that one goes out to about 5.5 miles. So make sure you're using quality lighting. And speaking of the Rugo, here's an image of the Rugo right there in front of us. So considerations for adding lights. This is the important stuff. First of all, when we add a light, it's going to change our CG, our center of gravity on our aircraft, and it may well cause our aircraft to fly differently, especially if you are sticking something on the nose of your aircraft or on the tail of your aircraft, or you're sticking it to the bottom of the aircraft, anywhere near your air vents, or perhaps you've got landing sensors, etc. All of these things are going to cause the aircraft to fly a little bit differently. And it may affect your battery life because you've added weight to the aircraft and you've added drag to the aircraft. So both of these things can have a detrimental effect on your battery life. It can also affect the magnetometer, the IMU, or the GPS system. So it's important to understand that not all aircraft are suitable for night flight. Now, next up, we always recalibrate the aircraft after adding lighting equipment. Keep in mind you have changed the construct around all of the sensors that are mounted on your aircraft. So as soon as we add this new device, we don't know exactly what we're blocking, and we don't know what impact it has on the aircraft, but most importantly, we don't know how it's going to affect the IMU. So we want to recalibrate the aircraft. This is compass and accelerometer after we've added the lighting equipment, and then in daylight, test your aircraft with the lighting mounted onto it so that you have a great feel for how that aircraft is going to operate and behave under these conditions. Now, next up, that's really important is that we follow what the manufacturer recommends. If the manufacturer doesn't provide lighting for you, you want to reach out via email or snail mail to the manufacturer and ask them specifically what their recommendations are for lighting. In most situations, the manufacturer is not going to respond to you. So you can send an email that goes out and you'll receive no response. And that's okay. It demonstrates that you did your very best to follow and comply per AC 107 with the manufacturer's recommendations. If you don't do these things and you don't check with the manufacturer, or if you do something that is clearly goes against what the manufacturer recommends, you could find yourself in a situation, if you have an incident or an accident, of what we call a 9113. And 9113 is FAA speak for what is referred to as careless and reckless operation. And that in and of itself is a very large fine. And so it's something you generally want to avoid. And other thing that I do mention here, and I see Linda just typed that into the chat box, that you fly with your lights on during daytime. We really do appreciate pilots who do that. Some of you may have seen the recent article that I did on a 77-acre helicopter crash site where we had a double fatal up in central Nevada. We were in a very bright daylight environment, but occasionally the aircraft would get lost among rocks and trees as we were flying this very, very large site. And so by using night lights or by using strobing lights, it really helped in that broad daylight be able to see exactly where that aircraft was and what its heading was and where it was going. We're certainly well within the rules of VLOS, but there's a difference between glancing up and having to think about where your aircraft is versus just simply looking up and seeing immediately where it is and having no question. So we want to be sure that we're using good lights. We want to be sure we're using manufacturer's recommended lights. One example I like to give is Fox Fury and Autel came together and they developed a partnership for their lighting system. So when you purchase an Autel Evo 2 in what's called the rugged bundle, Autel provides for you a lighting system that just simply snaps on. This is Autel's recommendation for a lighting system on an Evo 2 drone. Autel provides this to you. This is the only authorized light that Autel provides. So they're going to tell you that they don't want you sticking a light on top of your aircraft. They want you using their certificated, their tested lights. Keep in mind, if there is any kind of an aerial incident or accident, the manufacturer becomes part and party to any legal action that may take place from the individual or property that you damaged in the process of that incident or accident. Again, we always want to test during daylight hours prior to night flight. We want to get our center of gravity as close to the center of the aircraft as we possibly can. We want to be sure that our aircraft is flying balanced, and again, that the IMU, the GPS, compass are not being affected by lighting mounted on there at all. Now, this is a good example because here we have a unique H520 aircraft with 2 lume cubes mounted onto it. The initial mounts for the lume cubes that lume cube provided to Autel to Unique, were really great in design. Unfortunately, where they were placed is that they had slid the lights forward and it had an impact on the compass on the bottom of the aircraft. And so they had to go back and redesign that mount so that the metal lighting was not impacting the compass on the aircraft. This real quick, it was just an example of night flight out here in Las Vegas. Some of you that have taken our night flight courses, you may have been out here. This is where we train and we take our pilots out and we play a variety of different games with these big rocks out there as part of the night flight training. It's really a beautiful environment, but it's a pitch dark environment, which is the most challenging environment in which we're going to fly. Keep rolling through here. So your eyes need to acclimate to darkness, and we want to protect our eyesight throughout this entire night flight process. If our eyes are exposed to white or bright light, it takes at least 30 minutes for our eyes to adjust. If you were a male over the age of 35, that number starts going upwards of 45 minutes. If you're female beyond the age of 38, again, that number starts really rising. And of course, there's a variety of other factors such as our general health, our weight, our exposure to different kinds of lighting, et cetera, et cetera. So this is all something that we want to think about is how to protect these eyes. What we do is we wear neutral density glasses that are favored by aviation pilots. We never want to wear polarized glasses when we're working in these environments. Anybody know why? You can put it in the chat box there. If you'll pop that in there, just write why we don't wear polarized glasses, and I'm going to move on while you type that in. One thing we can do is we can arrive at the flight area early to naturally acclimate to the lighting scenario and let our eyes become acclimated to what's happening there. The other thing that we can use is we can use red filtered flashlights or lighting sources during our setup and when preparations are not made in the daylight sunset. We can also use dim green flashlights or other kinds of things. Linda, I see that you can't see your screen. Why can't you see your screen if you're wearing polarized glasses? And while you type that into the chat box, I'll just point out this is a small red gel flashlight. These are what come with our, you can see that's red there. This is what we use in our night flight classes. This is a focusable light that we use in the night flight class so that we're sure that everyone has a red light, so we don't have to worry about white lights that are being exposed in night flight environments. We want to, we want to protect those eyes with a red light, or again, a dim green light. We don't wear polarized glasses because your tablet is also a polarized screen. Your tablet is designed to refract sunlight or refract bright light so that you can see what's underneath that screen and reduce reflections. Well, if we wear polarized glasses on a polarized screen, you can't see what's going on. And yeah, exactly, Farns, you got it right there. And a cockpit of an aircraft also uses polarized glass. This is why pilots do not wear polarized sunglasses. So it's certainly something, worth knowing there. All right, let's roll back to it. Now, in the event that you don't have sunglasses, or excuse me, that you don't have a phone or a tablet that we can put into night flight mode, I took a slide out there, but generally your phone or your tablet will have a night flight mode. The other thing we can do is purchase red gel. This red gel allows us to put a gel over top of our phone or our tablet. We can still see through it, but we've reduced the output of light by up to 75% by simply throwing on a red gel. So we can still see our menus, we can still see our picture composition, we can still see all of our vital telemetry information, but it's not nearly as bright, which means we're not going to have eye pollution. So that's one of the techniques that we use to reduce the amount of light that's coming off of our tablet. The light pollution, again, this is the worst. Light pollution can really create some problems. We want to be sure that we avoid light pollution. So we want to brief everyone involved in our project, involved in our mission and our operation about light pollution, and make sure that everyone turns off the flashes on their cell phone, that they cover over their smart watches, that they make sure their headlights are out. If they are going to be getting in and out of a vehicle, it's a good idea to just duct tape some red gel over top of the dome light in a vehicle. We want to make sure that there are no instances where bright light can enter our operation. Why? Well, for a couple of reasons, but the biggest reason is when you flash that bright light at someone, it's going to take how long till their eyes recover? Remember that 30 to 45 minute time frame? And what'll end up happening is that while you're flying at night, if you've been exposed to a bright pinpoint light, such as a camera flash, a smartwatch, a dome light, a headlight, etc., is as your eyes are settling back or as they're reacclimating to the darkness, your aircraft is flying around out there, and we see a nice white dot where our aircraft is lit up out there. But because we've been exposed to other bright light, our eyes will continue to flash that white information. So it becomes a question of which is the aircraft and which is the ghost, which one's the illusion. So we absolutely want to not be, on our in our training programs, we call them that person. Don't be that person. Don't be that guy that pulled out the cell phone to take a really cool picture of a night flight operation and left the flash on. So let's avoid being that person, because it messes it up for everybody else that's in the mission area, and particularly it's an issue of safety for the pilot and for the visual observers. So we want to avoid that as best we possibly can. Let's talk just a little bit about some of these phenomena. So one thing that happens is as we are operating at night, we experience certain illusions. One of the illusions that we see is we have what are called angular distortions and foreshortening. So this is difficult to capture with a camera because the camera doesn't process information the way your brain does. But one of the things that happens is at distance, a brightly lit object in the distance will begin to take on an ovuloid or a rounded appearance. If there's any moisture in the air, we're going to start to see halos that are coming around that moisture, that high humidity. These create illusions that our brain struggles to process quickly because, let's face it, we are no longer hunters. As a society, or I should say as a species of animal, we're no longer hunters. And so our night vision has become severely degraded over the course of the last 100 years or so since the invention of electricity. We're constantly looking at screens. We have electric lights all the way around us. We have headlights from vehicles, etc. So our eyes are not nearly as dynamic or balanced as they once were. And these illusions are becoming worse and worse. Next generations will have it even worse than we do. Another thing we want to talk about is what's called autokinesis. Fixation on a stationary object may cause us to believe that that object is moving. So in other words, we've got a small point of light that's out there. It may appear to be moving, and you've probably experienced this at some point in time where you're staring at a star and you start convincing yourself, hey, that couldn't be a star because it's moving. Or you see a bright point of light out there and it doesn't seem to be static in the sky. That's pretty common. Another thing that can happen is when we fixate on that single point, we become less aware of what's happening around us. So what we want to do is we want to look at these bright lights or these small points of light in the distance out of the side of our eye using our peripheral vision. Again, our vision can fool our brain into seeing a lot of things that are there. So if we think we're being fooled, or if you're locked onto something, or you see the light that appears to be moving, you can blink. You can, in some cases, very gently rub your eye or somewhat reset your ocular positioning. There are a number of different things we can do, but blinking and yawning are two of the best things that you can do. Let's talk about optical illusions for just a moment. So if I can get y'all to use the chat box here, if you could just use that chat box to tell me how many colors of gray squares you see. How many different colored gray squares are you looking at right there? I'll give you just a second to put that into the chat box. I see a 9 come up. Who else? I see 9, I see 10, 1. Oh, there's quite a delta between 1 and 10. Anybody else? We got 1, we got 9, we got 10, we got 6, 9, quite a few different answers there. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, you see only one color gray. Every single box in front of you is the same color. This is what is called a 50% neutral gray. If you've used Photoshop, we use this for backgrounds and compositing all the time. We have one color of gray laid over top of that gradient. And what that does is it creates illusions that cause our eyes to think we're seeing different shades of gray that we're actually not seeing. So why is this important? Why did Douglas throw this slide in here? Because when we start to hit that area of sundown or sunrise, what ends up happening is we have two components to our eyes. One is our cones and one is our rods. Well, cones are used in daylight vision. They allow us to see color. They allow us to see detail. They allow us to see various grades of color. But as we start getting into that sunset twilight period of the day, our photopic vision, in other words, our cones, they completely diminish. And our rods take over. Rods are not capable of color. Rods only see grayscale, and they struggle seeing detail in anything but grayscale. And so this causes us to have illusions, and we'll think that we're seeing things that we're actually not seeing, such as the 9 versus 1 shade of gray that we're looking at here. It also makes it difficult for us to see detail as we're looking out into distance. So this all happens right around that middle period. We call that mesopic vision. When we're right in that middle point right there. And then last but not least, when it finally becomes dark, we are using rods only in our view, and we call that scotopic vision, but none of you came here for a lesson in optometry, so I'll just leave that there. And if you want to do a little more research on your own, you certainly can. So let's have a look at another illusion. This is going to give us that idea of what happens when we fixate on a singular point. So if you'll just all look at the center square of blue and white dots there. Notice that those blue and white dots seem to be waving or moving over that field of green. This is not an animated GIF. This is a fixed image. And yet we have the illusion of movement. Well, this is not terribly different than looking at a bright point or a series of bright points of light that are on the horizon. Another place where this can really mess you up is if you're flying near an area where you've got extremely dark sky and just sort of a freeway or a highway out in the middle of nowhere with vehicles that are driving by with their headlights on, and sure, they're a quarter mile, half mile off in the distance, but as our eyes begin to see those headlights and then we turn away from those headlights into the sky, we will see moving illusions of white light in our vision that resemble this. So it can almost make you feel like you're drunk or you're inebriated at some level because you're seeing some movement in the sky that isn't real. It's just that ghosts in your brain are fooling you into thinking that you're seeing motion that's there. This is a great time for you folks to start putting together your questions and putting those into the chat box because I'm just about at the end here. So I want to be sure that you've got what you've got or got what you need to know here. Jackie, you're asking if this is like snow blindness. It's not terribly different. No, the illusory effect of snow blindness and the illusory effect of having a bright light is exactly the same. And I just realized that my green screen took over that last slide, so you're not quite seeing it properly. Thank you for letting me know that. I apologize. Let me get rid of the green screen so you can see that appropriately. There we go. So let's give that just a second for that to sink into your vision. Now you should be seeing that screen moving. There you go. See that moving illusion of the blue over the green? So yes, this is to Jackie's question, is that a little bit like snow blindness? The correct answer there is, of course, yes, it is. All right, let's get back to some screen here. So there's more information that's available on Night Flight. If you have opportunity to attend one of our courses, I'll flip over to a quick slide here. You can get the FAST team training that came from Sundance Media Group, Influential Drones, on the FAA website. So if you want to grab a screen grab of this particular slide, or you can just go to FAAsafety.gov and search for Sundance. And all of the courses that we've done, there's a risk mitigation course, there's a night flight course. Tomorrow we are doing a crew roles and crew resource management course, a CRM course. These courses do provide you with a wings credit and a certificate that you have successfully completed the test and taken the class. Or if you'd like, you can also catch us live at the NAB Post-Production World. I will also share with you that through Women in Drones, you can access this book that Jennifer Pigeon and myself authored on Night Flight. This is now about 4 years old. But most of the data is accurate. The two places the data is not accurate in this book is when we wrote this, the FAA had a very specific requirement for strobing and lighting color. That again, as of April 21st, that requirement has shifted. But otherwise, all of that information in here is still current and still active. I guess that unless we start seeing some questions come forward, I think we've pretty well reached the end of my presentation here. So just want to share that I'm grateful again for this opportunity to sit and speak with all y'all at Women in Drones. And I look forward to next opportunity to present with you again. So thank you for everyone for sitting and listening to me go on for a little bit here.
Oh my gosh.
I'm moving to Vegas.
Fantastic information. Woohoo!
I'm moving to Vegas. So much going on there. Move over, get me a house, Jennifer. Here I come.
Real estate here has gone out of control though. So if you're looking for a house, start looking now.
Start looking now. Yes.
Yeah.
Every place is out of control. Now everybody's a drone real estate photographer, right? Yeah, that was awesome.
Not us, but
no real estate. Never again.
Exactly.
Is that like weddings, Farns?
Oh yeah, that's the worst.
Gotta be, yeah, I would think so.
So there are a couple questions that popped up into our chat. Also, I want to remind everybody there's been a ton of information coming in, a lot of links to great seminars and workshops that they are offering. And so I encourage you to definitely save the chat today, right? But there are a couple of questions in there if you want to address those. Do you see those on your end?
I can. So I see a question here. Do we go over the best way to train for these things? Are there computer tests or anything you do at home to train your eyes for the night lighting? There's really nothing you can do to train your eyes for the night lighting, but one thing you can do is train yourself to recognize things like distances and overcome autokinesis and foreshortening. And the best way to do that, and this is part of our training when you come out to one of our live seminars, is we set a target out at X number of feet, and it's quite a ways out there, usually 200 to 350 feet. And we basically play cornhole. What we do is we ask our students to fly the aircraft out, park that aircraft over a 20-foot circle above the target, and it's almost impossible for anyone to even remotely come close to that 20-foot circle in their first 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 attempts. But eventually we can begin to train our brain to recognize distances in the night. You're never going to be able to recognize altitude at night. That's virtually impossible. It's difficult even in daytime. So when you run across somebody who says, oh, that aircraft that's up there, he's flying it at 500 feet. They must be listening to ATC, because there's no way that you can figure that out. Even as a skydiver with over 7,000 skydives or over 6,800 skydives, you can't look up and identify exactly how how high something is, but we can train our brain to learn distances. It takes a while, but it's pretty effective. And from our perspective, it's crucial. If you're flying environments like you saw us flying on the strip there, we want to know within a couple of feet exactly how far we are from obstacles and so forth. So that's the best way to train for learning distances. There's really nothing we can do to train our eyes for night blindness, because again, that's a physiological thing that transpires between the rods and the cones in our eyes. So there's just nothing that can be done there. I see a question about how much is the night ops course. That's a question for Jennifer. Jennifer runs the organization, and I don't know much about costing and pricing.
And honestly, that depends on which organization we're hosting it with. If we're running it on our own, it's $495 for the 7-hour course. Sometimes that's a little bit more when we're hosted with Commercial UAV Expo or NAB, because then they add their costs on top of that. So ballpark about $495 for the class.
Looks like Farns, it looks like you're posting a picture of the Exolander system. So this is the Exolander system for the Autel Evo light. This is an incredible, if you're flying Evos and you're working public safety or something like that, this is an amazing system that's made for the Autel Evo. Very, very bright D100 light.
Yeah, that's on a different platform, but that's the light.
Is it? Okay.
Yep, I tossed that in the chat box there too. So if you want to check it out on Fox Fury's
So
website.
can you
it's
even
there.
see the drone with that light? You just see the light, right?
I have two on my platform, since it's a large platform. It looks like ET is coming down to get you.
Yeah.
Right, it
I would
totally
think
does.
so.
That being said, you know what? You just brought up a really interesting question. Is that allowing you to see the drone, or are you just seeing the light? So here's something that's really interesting, folks. Having a light on your aircraft does not give you authorization to use the light for VLOS operations. If you're seeing the light and not seeing the drone, that is not a VLOS operation. So just keep that in mind. You do need to light up the aircraft as in addition to the anti-collision lighting in order to be compliant with the FAA's requirement for visual line of sight operations. So
you're saying that you would actually put lights, different lights on it so that you could, with that light, to identify the drone?
Oh yeah.
We used to do that. We don't do that anymore. Why? Because again, you know, with this type of lighting system here, we've now got a side light that we can use as a strobe light. This allows us to identify our anti-collision lighting. And then what we'll do is we'll take this bright light, we shine that forward, or actually rearward on the aircraft, so that we're seeing the body of the aircraft using
I
this
see it flashing from here. Spotted Eagle, I see it. In Philadelphia, I can see it.
That definitely meets the three mile requirement, doesn't it?
Yeah. And in my case,
That's cool.
I use the nav lights and the strobe, and I have remote operations to turn on and off those lights.
Wow,
the
that's
bright
interesting.
ones. So, and like Doug was saying, yeah, you must identify the drone, period.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I that's why I thought when I saw that big light, I'm like, wow, can you even see the drone? You know, so you're, yeah, you know, the identification between the drone and the lighting. That's really interesting. Yeah, what if a bird slipped in that collar and took your drone out and he starts flying around on that light, right? Anyway, Spotted Eagle.
Sorry?
Never mind.
Oh.
So
Any other
much.
questions we can answer for you here? I'm not seeing any more come through the chat box, but happy to answer any of the questions that you have. But the one thing I would stress forward is folks, take the time to, first of all, get your ALC 677 training and get your certificate. But then second of all, start by going out to, you know, large open area and just start flying at night, and first start flying close to you so that you can build the confidence, because night flight definitely feels differently. By the way, another tip, do not drink caffeine before flights. Caffeine will make you jumpy. It does not help when you are not rested and relaxed. Caffeine just makes things much, much worse. FAA's got a significant amount of anecdotal evidence to prove that this is the case. But start practicing getting comfortable at night and with your controls at night and with the environment at night and so forth, and work your way out to greater distances. And soon you'll find yourself easily flying, you know, 500, 700 feet away from your aircraft.
Wow. That's cool.
So we don't really have time to go to the breakout rooms right now. So what I was thinking is maybe just to kind of get a topic rolling here, can you, Douglas, share your must-have, besides the lights, I know, the must-have tool that you take for your night operations?
You bet. So there's a few different things that we consider must-haves. They're going to be a little different operationally than I'm sure a lot of other folks work with. But one of the things that we have is we have, again, Fox Fury. We really like their Rugo lights. These are wonderful for lighting up a landing area. Some of you saw me talk about this on the FAA call. These Rugos work really, really well because we have the ability to adjust their brightness. So here's at its lowest setting. And when it's in that setting, we can also use a flat light. And we can use a spotlight that allows us to really dim that down should we need to. One of the things that we always do is we have a clothespin and a gel, and this allows us to create red light in our landing areas so that we're not dealing with that bright light phenomenon. So what this is a Rugo light that is attached to a $10 light stand that you can buy on Amazon. These are really inexpensive. This is called the Amazon. I don't know if you see that. It says Amazon Basics on there. Really expensive lighting stand and a $5 ball head that allows us to rotate that light around. So that's one of the essentials. I recommend that you have some kind of a table that you can work on, and I recommend that you cover that table with some kind of a blanket or a shawl or some kind of cloth so that you can set your aircraft down on it, mount all of your equipment up, and have all of your other smaller parts. That cloth will help it from sliding around. If you happen to drop something, it'll stay in that fabric. We just found ourselves out in the desert with screws and other little things that have fallen on the ground, and they're gone. They're irrecoverable at that point. So having a table and having a light is something I recommend. In our flight ops, I'm not a fan of putting, I know a lot of people will take their remote control, they put their phone on here and, do their normal thing. I'm not a fan. What I have is I have a very long USB cable that goes from my RC or my ground controller that goes to a tablet that is also mounted on a tripod, not terribly different than the Rugo light that you just saw there. I know that Linda Quackenboss, I believe you're doing exactly the same thing with yours, where you're putting a tablet, on a stand. This allows us to not only reduce the amount of weight that's on the tablet, but it also takes that bright light away from our eyes, the center of our eyes. And so what'll happen is I can look over at my tablet out of my periphery. And even though I've got it in night flight mode, I still try to not expose my eyes to the bright light of that 10-inch tablet that I'm using. Also, having that tablet be away from my ground station controller, it allows other persons such as a visual observer or other crew member to step up and see what's happening on my screen without having to look over my shoulder. So that's another, for us, that's another essential. Of course, we're always wearing safety vests. We have a variety of different safety vests that we wear depending on whether it's 110 degrees out there or it's 60 degrees. We're always wearing safety vests regardless of where we are. And so this is, excuse me, something we recommend for everyone. I've mentioned sunglasses. You need to have sunglasses. Absolutely need sunglasses in your kit. If you're flying in cooler areas or areas where it gets cold at night, I recommend that you have a battery bag. I recommend the LiPo battery bags. The thing I love about the larger LiPo battery bags, and you can find some great ones, again, looking at the Amazons of the world, they've got some battery bags that'll hold up to 30 Autel Evo 2 batteries. The great thing about them is that we can, inside that bag, we can put a hand warmer if we're operating in cold environments, as long as it doesn't make direct contact with the aircraft batteries. We can also put cooling gel in there, again, separating it so that it's not directly making contact with the batteries. We just want to make sure those batteries don't sweat inside of that LiPo bag. But these are ways of managing our batteries at night. Other things we carry rolls of reflective tape. So if we have to tape out a guy wire, or if we have to tape out an area beneath the power line so that the pilot can always identify where that power line is in the dark, we carry these things. As some of you may be familiar with our AVOC, our Aerial Vehicle Operations Center. We've got a really nice little closet in there for some of these kinds of safety tools that we carry around. And last but not least, you might want to carry a chair, because night ops, you're already tired. You've had a long day. And being on your feet and it being dark, your body naturally just simply wants to start to wind down for the day. And that's not a healthy scenario for night ops. So if you've got a chair that you can sit in to reduce some of the stress and strain on your legs, it's a good thing to be able to do. And I think that sums up most of our night ops closet. Jennifer, am I missing anything there?
No, I think you got most of it. I did add some links in the chat with regards to the Hoodman stuff. One of the things that we found in super dark areas, I mean, you have to remember we're in the middle of the desert where we've got zero light pollution. Sometimes even the lighting that comes with the launch pads is too bright. because it really does distract from, you know, what we're trying to do. So we actually flip the landing pad over and then just use that light that's bouncing off the ground as our area of operation. And you'd be amazed at how quickly your eyes kind of acclimate to that. And, you know, anything more than that, you're just blinded. So that's the only other ad I have.
That's a great point. Thanks, boss. And as mentioned, you know, we're all carrying, I mentioned earlier, but we're all carrying clipped to our safety vests. We've got these flashlights. We love them because they're focusable. So if you need something that's fairly bright, and I think these are, you know, like 15, 18 bucks on
Yeah, I shared a link of that a little bit earlier.
and
So
yeah,
definitely make sure that you
how
save
do
your
deal
chat
with
today.
ocean moisture, and Farns has got one good answer there, you know, using a lot of desiccant. If you're in an area where you're operating from warm environment to cold environment, in other words, it's getting fairly cold at night, you can wrap those batteries in a terry cloth or a microfiber towel. And that will also help deal with the moisture of the ocean, or I should say high humidity. It's not just an ocean thing, but pretty well everywhere.
Awesome. Any last questions? There's so much good information here. So if anybody has any last questions or something they've had to deal with and they're wondering, okay, how should we handle this? Be sure you pop them into our chat. Take advantage of this situation.
We've got
Jennifer, don't you guys have classes that you can, or information you can sign up for on your website?
We don't have anything live just yet. I mean, we do have our event page specific to night flight. We don't have anything live yet. With everything just slowly opening up, it's been a bit of a challenge to get back into, you know, practical field training. We did modify our training for night flight. We do have an online version, but we don't have one scheduled just now because we're really hoping to get back in the field. So our next practical theoretical, so the full 7 hours will be at Commercial UAV Expo, and then we're replicating it again at NAB. So that's September and October. I'll pop that back in the chat box here. But otherwise, yeah, definitely hit our events page. It's usually up to date with what we're currently hosting. I'll just find the quick link here for you. You know that I always have some kind of VIP pricing for the Women in Drones group, so definitely reach out.
Awesome.
Thank you, we appreciate it.
Also, I don't know if you caught it, so I reposted it. There is a save $100 on a discount to the commercial UAV conference that Sharon had posted, so I reposted that. So if anybody's thinking of going, I know a lot of things have shifted lately, and a lot of people are going to be heading to Vegas.
Yes.
We
We're
look forward to
looking
having
seeing
you.
everybody
That's
here.
right.
Also keep in mind, if you will, that we have tomorrow evening, if you'd like to get involved in some of the FAA safety classes, we are doing a 1-hour course on, again, you know, crew resource management and crew roles. These are 1-hour courses because the FAA requires that the course, a wings course, be 60 minutes or greater in length in order for you to achieve a certificate. So we do hope to see some of you join us at the FAA event. It looks like Jennifer.
Yeah, I just plopped that in again.
Thank you very much. And then we have another one coming up shortly after that called Should I, Could I Fly Here, to talk about, you know, the differences between where we can legally fly and where we can ethically fly. So we look forward to seeing you attending that course.
So that brings up a really good topic. So everybody that's here now has these really great links and everything, but if they move on, didn't save the chat, how would somebody find all those great courses that you're offering through the FAA?
If you go to faasafety.gov, not faa.gov, but faasafety.gov, and you just do a quick search for Sundance, or if you search for Jennifer's name, either one, it'll pop up with all the different courses that the FAA has online. Now, here's the really cool part is, yeah, you'll attend the night flight course or the CRM course, or, you know, the ethics course, and you'll attend it live. But in about a month and a half to 2 months, the FAA turns that into an actual advanced learning course, or an ALC course, so that you will be able to take the course later again, or you can invite your friends and have them view the course. It'll be recorded, of course, at that point, and then they take the test, and they'll be able to achieve wings credit as well as a certificate that shows they successfully passed that particular course. And that has value with your insurance company. So and if your organization's an ISO organization, it would count as continuing education credits as well. So all really.
So if you're, yeah, I'd say if you're not familiar with FAAsafety.gov, definitely check it out. Register yourself as a participant. They do have an automated crawler that will give you updates on any new workshops, seminars, or courses that come live. We're really fortunate because we're working with Influential Drones. They are considered a fast team training provider. Sundance Media Group is working towards that effort, but we're working with them right now, which means that our online seminars and workshops are transferring into that course credit. So the idea being that it's basically a twofer. You sit through the webinar, you write a test, and you get the certificate. So it's pretty awesome. There's a lot of just informational sessions, seminars, and workshops that are just informational and not certificated. But the courses that we've worked on with Influential Drones and our FAA team are all going to be wings credited. So it's pretty awesome. We're super excited about that.
Congratulations. Yes,
Thank
you
you.
should be. Yeah, good
Well
job.
You guys.
Yeah, you're awesome.
Make me blush.
That's quite a wordful, man. That was a lot of information. That was awesome. Good for you
I'm
guys.
glad you enjoyed it. I'm going to brag on Jennifer just for a second, only because I can.
Yes.
Jennifer is soon poised to become the first female training provider in the unmanned space for the FAs.
Really?
Ooh.
And here I
Jen,
thought I
go
was
Jen.
an idiot.
Oh, yeah, that's
Linda, you're too busy
wonderful.
actually working in the field, girlfriend.
Oh, good job.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah.
I've got a really good team around me. That's really what makes the difference.
Sure, absolutely. Teamwork makes the dream work for sure, for sure.
Yep, you got it.
Mhm.
You are doing fantastic things, and we thank you so much.
Yes.
All right. Well, Douglas, thank you for your time. Thank you for all your knowledge that you've shared with us. I know there were a lot of comments coming through and questions, and I think you did a wonderful job at making us all a better pilot today.
That's right. Absolutely.
Right?
Ultimately,
for
that's our
having me.
goal.
Yep. So thank you so much for joining us. And then coming up, I just want to do a quick reminder. Next week, we have Autel here. We also have Kim brought in an FPV flyer coming up. Her name's Susan, and we're super excited. So we have a lot of really great things coming up. So we will see you next week. And thank you again to both Jennifer and Douglas. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. It was great. Thanks for everybody for joining us. We had a great, it's been a wonderful year with you guys. Thank you so much.
Yes.
So much every
Thanks.
week, right? We're better
Yes.
together.
Absolutely. See everyone next week.
Okay, have a great week, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Desi.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
That kind of wraps it up.